Whatever you do, don't go in the garage. And Kristopher Roe of the Ataris did just that in the new music video called Car Song. Hi, Kristopher. How's it going?
Hello, doing really well. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I just got finished watching that video, and it looked like you had so much fun shooting that.
Honestly, it was the most fun I've ever had doing a music video, no lie. When we kind of came up with the idea to do the whole Breaking Bad theme, like it all started because I bought the Volvo that was in the final episode of Breaking Bad from the assistant director. He was a mutual friend of my best friend who plays drums on all my new recordings and owns the studio. And he first got the offer from one of his Herbie the Love Bug old collector car nerds, because he has an old vintage Herbie. And he goes, would you like to buy this car, the Volvo from Breaking Bad? And he goes, yeah, but my wife will kill me because I already have like 4 cars sitting in the driveway I drive. So Kate, being the awesome woman she is, thank you, the car ended up with me. And I got first refusal on it. And we drove out to Albuquerque in full cosplay of Mike Ehrmantraut and Saul Goodman. I was Mike Ehrmantraut with my bald head. And we were them when after they walked through the desert and then they go to the gas station and get like these. Saul Goodman has the these colors don't run shirt, and then Mike Ehrmantraut has like blue board shorts and a yellow Albuquerque or New Mexico shirt and flip-flops, and we just look ridiculous, but he thought it was funny and showed up, bought the car, and then of course, like less than a week later, my actual car that I drive to shows decides to die on me, and I'm like, well, perfect timing, because I can't very well drive this Volvo around because it's not super dependable yet. And so I needed to get a new car. And so I financed a new car for the first time in my life. I have good credit finally. Adult things. And then I decided, like, all right, you know what? The money I was going to use to record that I was procrastinating anyway, but this was the extra bit of incentive I needed. I always like to say that, like, the Walter White's car was the last kind of caveat that gave me the kick in the pants that I needed to start recording. And with that, I asked Bob, I was like, hey, who runs the studio? But I was like, Bob, would you like to trade studio time for this Volvo? And he's like, absolutely. And so with that, I got a little over a couple weeks studio time and went and started the new record, and first Car Song was finished. And I'm like, you know what? I can do this again. I know how to do this. This is like an old friend that, like, I was always recording during my time off that people see on paper, but I don't think I ever like stopped and actually focused enough, because I was either always touring or I was doing it like I'd go on tour, make a little money, and I'd do it in my own leisure. But this was like the first time, I think, following like everything that happened in 2020 in the world and in my life, that I actually like now tour less. But I do it. I tour a lot, but in a good way. I'll go out, play like 2 shows on a weekend, come home, and actually have some balance. I learned how to balance my life, to be just Kristopher and also be the guy who plays music in a band. And it's the best thing I ever did, because it's led me to, I've recorded 2 albums worth of material, and one half of that is almost done. The other album, the stuff I'll finish down the line. But the good thing is I'm halfway ahead of myself with a bunch of songs that are really good. I just can only put like maybe 12 to 14 songs on a record. And
but you have like 30 songs in the bank.
Over 30, for sure.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I mean, like, drums, bass, guitars on the other ones I don't have finished. So they're like fully started track. Like I started tracking those. And then the ones that I have, I've got about 14 that are almost complete, minus like a couple of those, they just need me to do vocals. I'm at the studio right now, and I've been finishing some guitars and vocals on those last 3 or 4 songs. So of the actual new record, which pretty excited about.
Well, it's really cool that a car kind of initiated you getting back in the saddle there, and it's a car song. So is it your old car that it's written about, or is it like an old flame, or what?
I wanted to write the song in a way where it sounds like I'm just talking about a person, but it's really about all the memories I had traveling around in the first new car I ever bought, like from a lot, which I had a couple vans for touring in the 90s. And I had one car my parents gave me for like my 15th birthday for a gift for getting my first job. But my first new car I bought, as boring as it was a 2003 Dodge Neon. That Dodge Neon went everywhere with me on every little acoustic tour on North America, every full band tour. I love driving myself because it's all about the journey. And that's when I get most inspired, when I'm alone, just traveling. a very stream of consciousness writer. So when I'm like seeing just a little thing could trigger my mind to be like, I see, there's a line in the first song of the new record, which is called, the first song is called Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. Because that's just where I ended up in 2020 when the world shut down. Unknown to me, I ended up living there for 7 or 8 months, which in solitude, and went through the biggest breakup of my life, and got COVID for 6 weeks, ended up in the hospital, nearly died. But this was like my kind of a rebirth of my life and rebuilding of my life, and it kind of all started in that town. So this song starts with me kind of, not Carson, but that song basically starts with me in this small town going through these motions of like everything I just went through and how I'm going to figure out where my next place in life is going to be. And I remember I had like a bad like toothache or something, and I had to find a dentist, but everything was shut down in the state. There were only emergency dental, so I had to drive out to White Sands military base in Alamogordo, New Mexico, which was 4 hours driving. But the cool thing is I got this beautiful drive through the White Sands National Park, and I remember seeing this eagle perched up high on a pole, and then just that one visual made me think about how even in these dark times that like there's beauty, and that maybe that's like my father who passed away, like watching out for me. And I wrote this line that says, I saw an eagle perched up high. He said, don't be afraid of this darkened world. There is beauty in the darkness. You just have to set it free. And that kind of began that first song. So with Car's song, tying it back in, I digress. That song was just about these memories I had traveling around in this car. And you start seeing the car resting amongst the rust of all these other roadside monuments, these other cars in a junkyard, dandelions springing up out of their rusted bodies. And that's basically how it began. And then the car and its untimely demise when a person in front of me slammed on their brakes when traffic came to a halt. And I veered off and hit this big flashing neon road construction sign and peeled back the top of the car like a sardine can, and I didn't have a shard of glass on me. And I remember that in itself was this epiphany of like, wow, how did I live through this? But so that's kind of that. And then there's a little bit of my father and the factories and abandoned kind of Eastern European Cold War look of Anderson, Indiana, where I grew up. The Midwest, it always has that kind of sad, broken down beauty of this former wasteland, this former bustling place that is now a wasteland. And so that's like the second verse of the winter skies weeping, the factories lie in their graves, like Cold War artifacts marching in some ghost parade. That's my father's factory in Anderson, Indiana, and just driving by it and remembering like he used to make these automobiles at this factory, and it once had this other story, and now it just lays in ruin. So that's kind of what it is. It's a very Midwest summer song, roll your windows down in your car, and yeah, but also I like an air of sadness in what I write.
The video is so fun.
Thank you.
And especially when you get pulled over and then like a Walter White jumps in, takes off.
He repos the car out from under us.
Yeah. Did the dog eat the whole pizza?
No, luckily Jeff, that's Jeff who runs the label who put the 7-inch out. That's his dog who's the best. And the dog came out. That was total just dog improv. Like the dog got out while we were filming and that scene. And I that was kind of a last minute thing. Like, man, we need another like beat or movement in the middle of the video that ties into Breaking Bad. Because we knew we had the whole reenacting the scene where Walt steals the car in New Hampshire. And it's like, just get me home, get me back to New Mexico so I can avenge the Nazis of Jack and his gang and get his money to his children. And so I knew we had that, and I knew we had the ending where I'm going to get arrested after the joyride and they find the blue meth in the trunk. And but it's like, all right, we got to throw pizzas on the roof. That was like day of. I'm like, Jeff, order some pizzas, make sure that they're not super fresh because I imagine they're going to fall apart. And, after I'm done driving around the neighborhood, filming all day, we're going to come back and film that scene. So that was like the last thing we filmed. I was the first pizza thrown, first try. I was like, so
and that's why you celebrated so hard.
You're celebrating for real? Because I'm like, yes. And then Mike did it, first try. The only one that wasn't the first try was Chris, the drummer. And we all four, it was only 3 pizzas. So John, the guitarist, didn't throw one. But he got a second try. But that's when I think it fell. Or no, when Mike got it off the roof, then it fell and the dog started eating. But no, the dog only got a piece before pulled the dog away. And so it didn't get, sick on human food. But I think the only funny part that you don't see is if we missed I promised Jeff's kids that I'd let them throw it. So they're like over there waiting, like miss, but we got it on the first try. And I bet they were so bummed, these little kids wanting to throw a piece on the roof. But it was pretty funny. It was a fun day. Yeah.
Yeah, and so as much fun as you're having, there is a sentimental take on this song. Like you were talking about your dad. You told us that he passed away, 2014?
Yeah, 2014. Yeah, he had battled alcoholism a lot of his life, but he got sober when my parents. The weird thing happened when I was 5. My parents split up and got divorced. But then when I was 10, they got remarried. And I always kind of say that was the harder part, because getting to know my father again during my youth and my angry adolescence, as I'm turning into this like young, spirited kind of counterculture alternative kid or whatever, And so by the time I was 15, I got to know my father again, and he became like the biggest supporter of the band. And he was always, you wouldn't see him without an Ataris shirt. He would always be bragging about his son plays music, and it would be so embarrassing back then. But when you look back as an adult after he's passed, you're like, man, he was so proud. So for me, it was always about, how can I do a tribute that is really special for my father? And I saw this article somewhere. I always say, I think it was in an In-Flight magazine at some point, like years ago. And it said, like, you can press a loved one's ashes into like a vinyl for 10 of your family members, and they'll just give you a few records for your immediate family. And I was like, that's what I'm going to do for him. So I reached out, and it was so expensive. And it was like, they press a few records. And I'm like, so that was why, because it was a specialty thing. They probably don't do pressings of vinyl for lots of bands regularly. And so it was like, they're just doing this for a gift for family members. So I always kind of had this in the back burner. That's what I wanted to do. Then there was like, I spread some of his ashes in Truth or Consequences where I was, and I have some on my mantle. But there was like, I want to do a big thing for him. And so it just made perfect sense that for me, I always wanted to make him a literal physical part of the music that he always championed me to create, and he was always supporting. Like when our first video in this diary, the one prior to Boys of Summer, aired on MTV, they would sit every day and wait for it to come on and tape it on a VHS every time it aired. I'm like,
really? Oh,
yeah, it was so like, I was like, you guys, like, you've seen it once, but they were literally taping every time because they were so proud. And when he passed, cool. I found VHS tapes just full of that video over and over again. I was just like, oh man, I'm like, my parents, they're silly, but it was also like, choked me up. So yeah, when he passed, it made sense. I wanted to do something special. And that was the idea. And then my friend Jeff, who runs Double Helix Records, an independent label who put the 7-inch out, he knew I wanted to do that, and he always wanted to release something from the Ataris, and he was a mutual friend of me and Bob, who runs the studio, and he's like, let's do a 7-inch or an EP or something. And I was like, yeah, maybe we do that until I get a record done. And then that turned into like, well, can you help me realize this dream I have of pressing my father's ashes into vinyl and making it a memorial to him? And he's like, yeah. And he called a bunch of pressing plants, and he finally found one. I think he got a lot of no's because I don't think they understood the intention, which is fair. And it's coming from a great place. And then another big part of it for me was that, like, I cannot and would not take a dime from this 7-inch, because to me, it was all about me just wanting to do this tribute and have a bunch of these records to give to my immediate friends and family. Right. And then the rest of them that are left can go out into the world, and his ashes can go all over the world and live on through our fans. And so I was like, you know what I want to do to make it further come around full circle is to give all the proceeds from the vinyl away to a charity that helps young adults and families that are affected by alcoholism, addiction, and mental health. Because I was always going to therapy with my parents. We always went to AA with or adjacent groups with my dad. So that was all really important, an important part of the story, to like celebrate his life, but also like make it something positive. So that's what we ended up doing. And I'm grateful to Jeff and his wife Em for helping me realize it. And it's weird and wild that it all came together, but yeah, here we are.
So on that vinyl too, you have numbers for people to call to help mental health, and it's a plethora of information that's helping people, and the money is it going to shatterproof.org? Yeah,
Shatterproof is the we found that seemed to fit what we were wanting to do with it, and I'm really grateful to them. So yeah, it was pretty awesome. And yeah, we put a lot of resources in there, ones that I personally use. Like in 2020, like I said, when I went through the breakup with my ex-partner, there was like a lot of time there that was really, everybody, it's all about having resources in those times and trying to channel something dark into something positive. And not everybody has that opportunity, because even me at that time, like, I had no touring, so I had no money saved because I was just in this cycle of constantly go play 3 months of shows, come home, and then go back and do it again. And then I'd, spend the money from tour on recording or on whatever. And so it was basically when everything happened in 2020 in March, it was like, I was planning. There was a whole tour we had planned and it got canceled the week before. And so I'm like, well, what do I do? How do I make a living? Not only that, then I got sick too and medical bills. And it was like, so at that time I was like, well, I want, when I went to the breakup, I wanted to start some sort of therapy and like an online therapy. And I found like that app Calm for meditation. And I found like BetterHelp. And there was another one that did therapy. But it was, it was like, man, this is like free therapy resources. And it just kind of sucked. I was like, there should be, at least in the US, we don't really have access to that. It's, I think at minimum that I found, it was like a few sessions for a few $100 or something. So, but I did that. And luckily I had enough resources to do that. But, in doing a 7-inch, I at least wanted to share some of those things that helped me and then helped my father, like AA and some things like that. I'm, almost 11 years, haven't drank in 11 years. And so just one of those things. I made a dedication there talking about my mother and I and our story when he was separated and how everything we went through. And then also a lot of things about my dad. And so I wanted all those things to be known. So hopefully the story helps some people. I posted it on our website for the people who don't get the 7-inch. So yeah.
How many 7-inch vinyls are available?
There were 200 that went to me for friends and family. I don't really have 200 friends and family, but it was like, for me, it was important to know that anybody that I felt in my life should have one, should get one. I mailed out some of those. I've had a few of them now, but there's still some that were, I think, in process of being pressed, but they were able to get me send us a few of the first ones, and it was great to see one and hold one. And then I think in public for sale, I think there's going to be a total of like 300. Okay. Don't quote. It was either 200 or 300 in the public, and then I think it's a total pressing of 500, but 200 won't go to the public, so there's actually a pressing of 300. And then there's a rust red variant that matches the one colorway on the 7-inch, and then there's a smoke and silver and turquoise, and it's like a turquoise and black smoke. And then the other cool one that I love, it was exact color match to my father's ring. He wore a wedding band. It was a ring that he wore forever, and then it served as his wedding band, and I got it after he passed. But it was this real turquoise, like Native American ring. Yeah, you would never see him without that too. So I was like, let's do a vinyl where we just could exact color match that ring, so that if people can't get their hands on this really special thing with the ashes, or maybe they live in one of the few states where they're not allowed to order it for some odd reason, and or maybe they just don't feel comfortable ordering that. I respect that, but I was like, here's a silver and turquoise one that's still very related to him. The other ones are just cool colors that like Jeff picked out. I thought they look great too. But so there's 4 total, and then 2 that are like really special to me, and the other 2 are just cool colors.
That's a thing. There are states in America that don't allow.
Yeah,
like
there's
that.
And they're kind of the ones you would expect, which is odd. I always joke ones like there's like Florida, Texas, and stuff. It's like ones where you can own like a tiger in your backyard, but you sure can't buy a 7-inch with somebody's ashes. It's really odd. And maybe that's not true anymore, but for a long time, a couple of those states were like, I remember seeing a documentary called like The Elephant in the Living Room. That's what it was. And it was just talking about all these states where they still had, you could still legally own an elephant, like Ohio, Florida. It was just like, holy really? I didn't know this. This is a while ago, but so some of them hopefully change those laws, because personally, that's not something you should have, not to get all animal rights guy. I'm just like, I care about animals, but you can't buy a 7-inch that has somebody's remains. Like, I get it. But also, yeah.
So you haven't toured in a while. All that bad luck that you had, but gives you a lot to write about.
Yeah.
Are you nervous about getting back on the road? Are you excited? How are you feeling about that?
After what I went through, it was really traumatic. And like, I still live my life with some precautions in doing so. Like, I feel I still live my life to the fullest, and I play shows. I've been actually playing a lot of shows since 2022. Just like full lengthy tours is something I don't really like doing anymore, just because like I found that a lot of my friends' bands have been doing this long before 5 years ago. They were still going out, and they would just like fly out or drive out, play a couple shows on a weekend, or play some festivals and then come home. Not only the thing that I think really works for that, especially now for us, is that in going away and not playing as much, our venues have doubled in size that we play pre doing that, because when you're touring for 3 months at a time, you don't create as much demand as when you play less, and you also like oversaturate. And I think people get this feeling like, we can see them next time, and like I like to feel like maybe it's smarter to just kind of like go out, play a couple major cities, do a couple others, and then we'll go out and we'll play a couple small cities where people don't go. Just mix it up, but you don't have to play every night except Sunday or whatever it was that we would do 6 nights a week. Then you only have time to do your laundry on Sunday, and you get burnt out. I mean, you get really tight because you're a machine by that time, where when you play these like weekend shows, like we get in a groove, but it's like once you're getting in the groove, you're like, I wish we had a couple more, but it's also good because it leaves you wanting more as the musician too. So we've been busy, but like not in the traditional sense, but I'm sure when the record comes out, you will see us doing a little bit more like, we have a lot of stuff coming up we haven't announced, but I mean, still I plan to just mostly focus on festivals and weekend shows and special shows, like stuff where also when you go out and you tour and you're touring every night of the week, maybe you can't find other really special bands that will want to commit to that many shows. So now a lot of bands will have like one band do a few shows, so now with weekend shows, we can be like, okay, who are some great bands in Boston? And then we could be like, all right, let's go find these bands and see if they want to do 1 or 2 shows. And I think that's cool. We could pair up with another band and you make it an event rather than just a band is on tour. And I always quote this one quote because to me it just makes perfect sense. Is like one of my favorite bands in the 90s was Sonic Youth, and Thurston from Sonic Youth said this quote when the Pixies got back together, that the worst thing we ever did was not break up. And I hope I quote him correctly, but what I gathered he was saying is like the Pixies, when they got back together, they were immediately playing these massive amphitheaters, and Sonic Youth, who had just consistently been traveling and touring, their venues were these big theaters, which were still pretty awesome feat in their own right, these really cool rooms. But it's one thing to say about going away and creating demand. I mean, look at like Jawbreaker, another great example. That band broke up for a long time, and then they came back and they headlined Riot Fest for like 30,000 people or whatever it was. And people definitely want the thing they can't have. It's human nature, and I think that it's proved very true, and I think it's the smartest thing I ever accidentally did. I can't say it was a preconceived thing. It just, because the world happened, I just decided for 2 years to take some time off. And when I came back, I was like, I want to do this way and try this. And I was like, why did I always try my best to make things more difficult than they needed to be? Because now it's like so much easier, because now I can record and have time to just be a normal nerdy human,
And let's talk about your recording. So on this album, you're using vintage gear and analog?
Yeah. Well, we've done that with every album, really. But, with this recording for the last, I think 2013, I recorded the song All Souls Day, which was kind of one of the first songs that was going to be part of a new record. And then we ended up releasing some of those earlier songs of the new recordings to a compilation album of like some new songs, some songs that were written ages ago, but I just recorded them for the first time because they fell to the wayside. And we were out touring. I'm like, we need some new music out. I don't have time to finish this record, but these like 4 or 5 songs are really good. Let's release them and kind of couple them with these old songs that are new recordings and make. So we released this thing called Silver Turns to Rust, and I forgot when it came out, but that was the early sessions of what would be this new record. And like Car Song was one of the songs that kind of started in those sessions, and then I never got around to finishing it, writing lyrics for it, finishing some extra guitars, but the drums were tracked in, I think, 2013, which is odd.
Oh, wow.
But Bob's studio is a studio that's kind of a niche place, kind of like Jack White's studio or these old studios that, the Beatles or the Motown studio. Just it's very much built on people who want records that sound like these really old records that sounded real and honest. And, he's got 2 really great analog 2-inch tape machines and all these old, just so much nerd gear that, like, even for me, like, I don't know what half of it does, but I'm just like, but as far as the stuff that, like, we do know what does, there's a bunch of cool old guitars and amplifiers and so many old drum sets, mostly 50s and 60s era when it comes to drum sets, and then guitars, bass stuff, usually 60s, 70s is his sweet spot. I don't know, the manufacturing, the wood, everything, there's just something to be said about guitars and amps from that era, but there was just, and they're all like tube amps and the old microphones, looked like they were in like old, news studios, and that's how we mic the amps. But again, I feel like it's not just for show. For me, I love the warmth and the feeling of that, and also just knowing that I am making a record that's got real human elements, and not, taking something and making it just so like chopped up and perfected. And I think there's something to be said about using those tools as tools. And, if you have a house, you obviously don't have the ability, like I don't have a home studio. This is me paying somebody who is my best friend. I still pay the daily rate here. I don't get it for free to record and at a great place that I choose to do. And that's where all my money goes. But obviously in your house, you can't do that. I mean, it's not practical. So yeah, you get Pro Tools and record and get a good microphone. I mean, I just, when I demo songs, I just do it in GarageBand or on my phone, and then I just take it here and record it. But if I had a space that had like an outbuilding or something, I would build something where I could record my ideas. But I like working with Bob because he understands my songs. He plays drums on them on every new recording I've done since 2013. It's me and him. And then the live band is like a different thing. It's like, that's how the Ataris has always been. I think people see it as like, something else, but it's like, the guys who play live are just as important in their own right. But like a lot of bands do it that way. And then the Beach Boys, Brian Wilson for a long time, he would go in the studio, record these amazing albums, and he wouldn't even go out and play them. Brett from Bad Religion, he writes a lot of those songs. Graffin, the singer, writes the rest, but he doesn't tour with them anymore, but he's still very much a part. So for me, the only difference is I go in with Bob and do the thing in the studio, and he's like my right brain and understands exactly what it needs to be. And then I pick and choose what songs I want to show the band, and then we go out and play them live. But I think it's cool because some bands, I think it sounds so just cookie cutter live that you could just put the record on and just sound. I like the fact that live, I am meticulous enough to make these songs sound like how I hear them in my head, but also they aren't exact. And I think that's cool because like if you look at a band like Nirvana, you would go one night, it would feel like it was just the beautiful train wreck and there was so much chaos and you never knew what you were going to get. And I think that's lost sometimes when you have a band playing to a click track, there's backing tracks, none of that with us. Just two guitars, bass, drums, one vocal. That's what we do live. No tracks, no, banner behind us. I like being the anti-band, like just show up in, jeans and a t-shirt and play some rock and roll. That's what I strive with the live show. But, for kudos to everybody who do it their own way. There's no right or wrong. It's all music,
It's refreshing too, to still have that option,
Yeah, I agree.
This album, do you have a date we can look forward to, like a countdown for us?
Yeah, kind of. I think that it's kind of, unfortunately, because the record will be done, like, it could have been done in this session, but because what I'm about to tell you, I just decided, okay, I can continue recording a little bit more. What it is we're kind of up against the, like, if you can get the album mixed by X date, it will meet the deadline of the final date of this year, which will be the fall in like October, because nobody releases records after October unless you're like Christmas stuff or Disney. And so to get an album, or like Mariah Carey or something. So to get an album out in October, you unfortunately have to deliver it by like now for the turnaround of the vinyl and everything. And so I could have raced and met that deadline, but my thought process was like, look, man, you still have a few more songs that, I haven't written lyrics to that are like great and will really lend something to this album. Like I have the full album now if I want it, but I'm always like, you waited this long. Don't just, be hasty at the 0 hour. Like just see if you can finish those few. And like sometimes what happens is like, and I've heard this from so many bands, like I always think of we worked with this guy Lou Giordano, who was he recorded So Long Astoria, the album Boys of Summer, on it, and I recorded with him because he worked with one of my favorite songwriters, Paul Westerberg of the band The Replacements, and he worked on the Goo Goo Dolls' first big album. And he told me this story about that album, how the song Name, John Resnick had that song sitting around. He thought it was a throwaway. And then like the 0 hour, the label or somebody like, encouraged him to like write another tune or work on it. And they recorded that. And he was going to just discard that song. And it became this massive hit. And, we know, knowing that song and how great there's so many great songs on that album, Boy Named Goo, but still like, that's how it is, I feel, as a songwriter, that already in this session, I've like went into the shower here, and I call it the magic shower. It's really hilarious because I went into the shower, had an idea in my head, came out of the shower like 5 minutes later, and I had the finished thought of an entire song, and I'm like, that's a song, I better jot that down. And it became one of these songs on a record where I'm like, that's like kind of, for lack of better words, like a hit or a radio song that is like adding something to this record that I feel would have been absent without it.
Right.
I did it again. And it was just like, what the hell's going on? And so just last night, like we would have had the same thing if we would have stopped recording and just said, we're finished with this record. I had this idea that was kind of 90s, like Nirvana meets like, I don't know. It has a good feel, like something current too. Like I don't really listen to a few of these bands, but like kind of reminds me of like, I love Title Fight. I thought they were a great band, but it kind of reminds me of like Turnstile or something like that. But I don't think I've ever even heard a complete song of the band. I think they're really cool, and I think we are inspired by the bands that inspire them, like Quicksand and Bad Brains and Fugazi. So I think if anything, it's me channeling that. But I think listening to it, I think it's got like half Nirvana, half something current that sits alongside those bands. But it's one of these songs where I'm like, oh, this is like undeniably something really cool. And, you know, sometimes you'll hear something and you'll just know like, okay, I think I've got something cool here. And so that's one where I'm like, I'm glad we waited, because I think that will be a song on the record that people will gravitate towards. And you never know. It's always the ugly duckling that once you put some vocals to it or you finish guitars, it turns into the song that's like the song. And then sometimes the song you're really into that sounds really cool with all these cool guitar parts or whatever, then you put vocals on it, and you're like, maybe the melody wasn't as good, and then the song is no longer your favorite. So you've got to pay attention to that stuff and just like listen to the songs speaking to you, as hippie as it sounds. And yeah, in writing so many and recording so many, I have a lot to choose from. So it's, I think, more now about like finishing as much as I can and deciding which ones are going to not make the cut of this record and will be saved till the next. But the cool thing is there's like a lot of great songs that will be left. It won't feel like a leftover record. I'm sure I'll write more anyway. But so yeah, as far as a date, with my long-winded answers, probably just because I love the omen of this and the precedent, our Blue Skies album and our So Long a Story album came out in March. So I feel this is a summer record. So as much as I would love for it to come out this year, we're not going to make the mixing deadline to get the vinyl turnaround. So it'll be March of next year, probably 90%. The cool thing, though, is we're going to continue putting out music for the rest of the year, but it'll just be like more singles. Definitely one, but probably two more singles with vinyl. And so, yeah, people can look forward to more new music, more cool stuff. And that'll be, digital on all the streaming too. But beyond that, yeah, the record will be done, and it'll be a lot of like, oh, it's so painful to know that I have this record that I want to share with everybody because I'm really proud of it. But I won't be able to, they won't be able to hear it until March of next year. But except a few of my friends that I know won't share it. And they've been hearing songs that go along, and it's always cool to get their feedback. They're the type of friends that are like, will tell you if something sucks. And they're like, yeah, this is one of the best records you've written. I'm like, okay, good. I trust you. You're not going to blow smoke at my house.
Your tour starts May 24th. Are you going to break out some of these songs that aren't released on the tour?
We are probably going to play Car Song. We haven't, because we all live in different parts of the country, we haven't been able to get in the same room and rehearse. So it was basically like, okay, you learn it. And drummer, please send me videos of you playing it so I make sure that like it sounds fine, because we're not going to have time to rehearse it before we play it. We're literally going to go on stage and play it, and it's either going to be a train wreck or it's going to be fine. And that's how we played Boys of Summer the first time. We were backstage at a big festival, and our A&R guy's like, congratulations, that just became your single. We're like, what? We were filming a video for another song, and that wasn't supposed to be a single. And it was like, they didn't know the song, and I was like, I guess we got to play this today. So I showed him the song backstage. We played it. It was passing at best. So Car Song, I mean, because the first thing we're playing is a festival, we won't get a sound check. So maybe we can find time in a hotel room to just like get our guitars out and go over it. But yeah, I want to play it because it's the feedback it's getting, I feel we need to, and I really want to play it.
And we really want to hear it. So right now, you guys are in the UK. You're going to be hitting up the Netherlands, Austria, Switzerland, Italy, and then back to the States, couple dates in Canada. Best of luck with this tour, and thank you so much, Kristopher, for taking the time with me.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.